Well, well, well. This episode is about change, what that word means to us, why we don't like change, and some of the consequences of changing and not changing, I think, for all different reasons, and ways to accept change a little more openly, a little more with greater acceptance and a smoother approach to those things that quite honestly, give us anxiety and fear and cause us just kind of mental paralysis. It reminds me of a time when I was in an airplane with my stepdad. We were going to Barcelona. He was presenting an essay, a paper at a university there, and obviously asked my mom, "Do you want to go?" And she said no, which her loss, my gain. While he was presenting and listening to other dissertations, I was off exploring Barcelona. It was amazing. But before we even got there, while we were still in Los Angeles, he used to be a naval pilot, and he loves to fly. He loves to talk about flying. He has the window seat. I'm right next to him, and of course the visor is up, and we're looking outside. And he's explaining, okay, see that marker and see what that number is, and see that line, and the plane is we're now moving. I mean, we're seconds from taking off, and boom, that it's I think it's my favorite part of flying is the actual experience of just those jets, right, being thrust forward and you're kind of pushed back into your seat. There's some, vibrations and whatnot, and then you just really feel the power of the vehicle that you are in, and then the nose lifts up and you can still feel the ground, the wheels on the ground, and then boop, you're like, "Oh, okay, we're flying now." And it's a steady climb, right? As the pilots pull back and whoop, and you push back even deeper into the seat. And of course, things are getting smaller down below. And he's still pointing out, what the pilot is now doing and how he's adjusting and the buttons he's pushing. So it's really cool because since I'm not up in the pilot seat, I get to sit next to a pilot who's giving me a play by play. We're now passing through the clouds, and it's not the first time I've flown, but we hit some turbulence and the wings really start flapping. I mean, there's a shuddering vibration. The wings are shaking and flapping, and I'm sure he read my eyes and he said, "Do you know why the wings move like that?" And I said, "Like they're flapping, like they're gonna pop off?" I said, "No, I don't." "Is it a good thing that they're doing that, though?" He says, "Yes, it is." The wings, because they're experiencing so much turbulence, so much pressure, in front, above, underneath, they are engineered to be flexible, to adjust to the pressures and turbulence so that they can stay on the body of the plane. If they were stiff and did not move, they would snap off and we would die. So I always think about that, not just when I'm flying, but as a metaphor for how we live our lives, right? If I think more often than not, if we move into any situation, depending on where we are and when we're there, if we enter that environment so immobile, so just set in our ways, feet in concrete, right? Rigid and unmovable. If they ever did a study on this, more often than not, they'd find whatever endeavor that individual had, whatever intention that person had, they wouldn't be as productive, as fruitful, as successful had they otherwise been able to adjust, to find compromise, to read the room and adjust to change to the pressures and the situation at hand. So that metaphor I think is important to remember when we are entering an environment. And I was going to say a new environment, but I can think of just entering the same environment, right? As a teacher, I enter the same environment. It's the same room with the same kids. But what's different is our energy, right? Our moods, whether that's mine, theirs, it's ours together. If I come in so headstrong and set and just boxed into my own mentality, my own agenda, like we'll get it done, but I doubt we would ever be as successful had I, with the same agenda, same objectives or goals, had a more open-minded approach that is being willing to adjust and adapt and change to the environment that I was in. That is the energy of my kids and their needs as well, right? Incorporating into my agenda their agenda. And likewise, from their point of view, right, coming in kind of expecting, the Sperling effect, whatever that might mean, and they're reading my mood, but see on the board, okay, we're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. If they are set in their way, period, we're not going to achieve our purpose, which is to the best of my ability, I want to share this information and I hope you'll absorb it in a meaningful way. So, change is essential to not just surviving, not just living, but thriving. It really is. It is instrumental. It is essential in us being able to reach our potential, right? In our ability to grow, in learning and growing from something to something more. So why don't we, if there's so much benefit to that, if there's so much value to experiencing change, why don't we? Why don't we pursue change and put ourselves wholeheartedly as much as possible into those situations where we're really forced, called upon to change? I think amongst the multitude of answers, it all reduces down to one word: fear. And then it's the fear of dot, dot, dot. And that's what is so fascinating. We would rather listen to this narrative of that is based in fear, that is whose origin is fear. We would rather listen to that narrative than the alternative. Let me give you an example or examples. Horses have an instinct, fight or flight, and typically it's flight, right? They and off they go away from the perceived danger. That's it. It's emotional. They don't think about it. They don't, maybe if I had a little more grass and think about this, I'll realize it was just the wind and not a tiger trying to. They don't do that. They just, oh, sound, don't like it, I'm out of here. We can have that instinct, but I think it makes us, it removes something that is so valuable to our very existence, which is our ability to reason, our ability to discern the situation more acutely. And instead of just immediate instinctive reaction, we can pause, evaluate, and respond in a better way. So we're not horses. Got that. But I bring that up because that is an alternative, right? That is an option. Like them, these huge, gorgeous beasts, we could just perceive something that's off and then get the heck out of there. And sometimes that's the right instinctive response to have. But more often than not, like the pushing those extremities to the side, we create a narrative in which it validates why we shouldn't change, why we shouldn't try things, why we shouldn't explore and do something that is different. The fear in us coming from a number of things, right? Fear of failure, fear of having that facade of calm and confident being removed, of not knowing, of looking stupid, of messing up, of embarrassing ourselves, right? All of those fears of insecurity, of self-doubt, they come to the forefront. And because we have an imagination, that is ironically such a weapon of power, but of destruction as well. Our ability to create a hypothetical situation and thus a rationale. I don't, so ironic using that word, a rationale to explain why we shouldn't even try, why we shouldn't want to put ourselves in a position that isn't so precarious. It's just different. It's new. And being in that situation, we would grow as a result. Come success or failure, we would grow because we'd obtain clarity, we'd obtain experience, we would be able to apply that and build wisdom to defy all of that. We use our imagination instead of growing, retreating, and truncating our potential. What a crazy thing. I mean, maybe it is going back to our primordial state that it was to save us, right? Ultimately, your life is on the line if you hear a sound in the bush and wind or bear, you don't care, right? You, it's over there. You're heading that way to survive. That makes sense. Year upon year upon year, that is still in us. Maybe, I don't know. But what I do know is that, especially as a teacher, more often than not, when I ask a question, I mean, just a question like, what do you think? There's silence. And I'll do all the teacher techniques of another kind of coaxing question. I'll do the 10 seconds of silence. No, they're like stuck in the, I'm not answering. I'm not saying a word. I'm thinking something, but I'm not going to say it. What I typically do is talk to your peoples, meaning the people nearest you that you know and you've been doing this for months. Share your thoughts. And the class is loud with conversation. They're, well, I don't think, and you can see them gesticulating and sometimes debating. And then there's always a lull. That's your kind of your cue to engage. They've had the conversation, they've kind of heard everybody, and they're done. So boom. And so come the lull, and you dip in with the question again. So would anybody out there like to share? And zoop. And I call them out. I laugh. And then they laugh at themselves. They're like, I know this is kind of weird. But that is change, right? From the dynamic of teacher knows everything and blah, 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 vomits a whole bunch of knowledge and you just write it down and then regurgitate it on the test. Like, that's such lame teaching. They're conditioned to that. It's easier, right? Teacher does all the work. I can just chill, right? I can take some notes and appear really interested and jot some things down. And that's easy. Like, check, the day is done. I went through the day without I didn't have to think at all. Teacher did it for me. I don't think that's good teaching. I don't think that's good education. Maybe in part the fear is I'm going to raise my hand, say something and sound stupid, right? I'm going to say something that people are going to laugh at. People are going to, you know, oh God, did you hear that? Like, but that's what I mean. Our imagination, that's our brain creating a reason why we should be afraid, and thus we should not embark on a change of dynamic, be it with my teacher, with myself, in this class, what have you. Change, the reluctancy to change, despite, I think, completely understanding that that transition from something to something is a movement towards growth. That is completely beneficial. And yet, understanding its value, we still retract from it and choose silence. Choose my MO, right? Is I just go into class and I'm quiet and I take some notes and I just kind of hope that I float under the radar. That's the normal student, right? You get your few kids that constantly they walk in, their hand is up, like, "Got you." And sometimes I acknowledge them, like, I am not going to ask you to say anything because you're constantly you're the life buoy in the Titanic. Like, everybody's like, "He'll save us. He'll say something. He'll appease the teachers need to hear something from students, and I can just sit back and stay unchanged, not push myself forward to raise my hand, to offer my thought, to share my insight. I can just stay the line, no change, same person in as the same person out at the end of the bell. That is a missed opportunity for everybody involved, but especially for the students themselves. So we would rather listen to the hypothetical, imagined scenario of why we shouldn't do something different. And sometimes just do something. It is different from our normal routine. And that is change, right? It changes from something to something, a state of mind, a state of energy. I would rather create, it's quite a lot of work actually. I would rather create a hypothetical situation, and I can make it really detailed about how they would point and laugh and talk about me, whether it's to my face or behind my back, for how stupid I am or sounded by saying that. Whatever our imagination percolates and creates, we would rather believe that story, which doesn't exist, we made it up, than an alternative story of I've got something to say. I believe in myself. I trust myself. I know I'm smart. Nobody's going to laugh. They're not interested in that. They're interested in what I can contribute to the conversation. Negative, positive. Both are equal. Reminds me of the Robert Frost poem, right? When he's at a fork in the road and both of that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Like he's at a fork in the road, right? He looks down one as far as he could. He looks down the other, looks just as nice. And he says, I wish I could travel both paths and be one traveler, but it's impossible. And kind of side note to the poem, the misreading of that poem is he chooses the path that's not been walked on as much. But if you read carefully, the paths, quote, are really about the same. So it's not take the path that fewer people have walked on. It's take a path. You've got to make a decision. You've got to make a choice in life. And so to this scenario, you've got to make a decision. Are you going to go the hypothetical and imagine all things doom and terrible? Or are you going to take the alternative, which really should be the no-brainer path, right? It should have a sign, no-brainer path this way. Imagine having a class where you're 32 kids, 34 kids, all, pick me, pick me. I've got a thought. I've got something to share. Like, what an exciting class, day in, day out, for not just, of course, not for me, but for everybody together, for the individuals coming into that classroom. And so I'm just using, because I'm a teacher of 31 years, the classroom as an easy setting that I'm familiar with, but put that in any social dynamic, right? In your workplace, in a meeting, in a relationship, at a party, right? Whenever and wherever you're with somebody else, changing your routine, which is, and maybe I'm just projecting, right? Which is, at least for me, it was I'll just kind of be quiet and observe, right? I'll listen and then, jot down my insights. What if I changed and participated more, interacted more, put myself out there more? Exciting things one way or another are going to happen more than just being the kind of bump on the log in the social setting. Now, I've put us in scenarios where it's social, that is one plus at least another, arguably even more. But this doesn't only apply to being in a social setting, right? This is you and yourself. in whatever situation you come across, to be open, just at least initially, be open to saying yes, right? To considering that path. That's where we're going to grow. That's where we're going to level up. We're going to be different. The same, but kind of new and an improved version of our self 2.0, constantly having that opportunity only because we chose to embrace change. So change occurs when we choose not to be afraid, when we have courage, when we have confidence, when we believe in ourselves, we trust ourselves, and we want to see ourselves grow, when we want to improve the state of who we are, the situation that we're in, no matter the place or time. It reminds me of Julius Caesar by Shakespeare. The whole story revolves around creating a conspiracy to to kill Caesar before he is crowned emperor, because they're afraid that he will be a tyrant. And they're going to do a public execution, basically, by bringing him, coaxing him into the Senate, and stabbing him. And so the buildup is ironically not about Caesar. It's everybody but Caesar. It's the conspirators and their motives. It's a brilliant play because it's so multi-layered and so pertinent to people's pursuit of power, their ego, what happens when we become more powerful, how we disconnect ourselves to the rest of the people, to our conscience, our sense of morality, our moral compass. Ironically, right, the play is named after the guy who ultimately gets killed, but he has barely any lines in the whole play. So it's just everything surrounding him. But there's a scene in which he does speak. We're coming up to the Ides of March, the 15th of March, which is the day that they're going to assassinate him. And obviously unbeknownst to him. And he's parading through the streets, and a soothsayer, Artemidorus, comes out and says, "Beware the Ides of March." And he's like, wait, what do you mean by that? He said, "Beware the Ides of March." She's like, "Be careful of that day," right? He's like, "Okay, just some crazy dude." He's kind of thinking about it later on, and so he tells his priests, right, "Sacrifice the animal and let me know what you can read out of the situation." And they come back, they're like, "Bad omen. We sacrificed the animal and it had no heart. That's not a good thing." And then his wife says, "Caesar, Caesar, Caesar, you can't go. You can't go to the Senate today." He's like, "Why?" She's like, "Because I had a dream that you were a statue, and out of you as a statue were all these holes, and out of the holes, blood was flowing." He's like, "Eesh." It's pretty gross. Decius is there, and Decius is in on the conspiracy, and his job basically is get Caesar to the Senate. And he's like, "No, Caesar, Caesar, you've got it all wrong. It's not that, something terrible that blood is flowing out of you. It's that your blood is your life source, right? It's the life source of the Romans, and they simply want to um, be near that energy to empower themselves and make our Rome even more amazing." And he's like, I kind of like that one." And then he thinks on it for a moment, and then ultimately he says, I'm paraphrasing, "A coward dies many deaths. The valiant die but once." And I love that. I love that, right? The coward dies many deaths. The coward, those who are afraid of change, afraid of doing things that might be risky, or they're afraid of doing things that are different, because they're out of the norm, out of the routine. They die a thousand deaths. They failed in and never learned. They were held back by the fear of what could be. But the valiant, right? The courageous, the bold, the noble, the confident, they die but once. Ultimately, when your heart finally stops beating. And so in an assertion of free will, of come what may, I will live or die on my terms from my own actions. He says, let's go to the Senate. Well, should have listened to the omen and the soothsayer and the priest. What is that? I'm playing with the idea that is the play ultimately telling us, like, listen to everybody else? I don't think so, actually. Because of his last words. His last words are "et tu, Brute," because everybody's whacked him, and then, he gets a stab in his back, and he's like, right? And he turns around, and it's Brutus, and he's like, "Et tu, Brute?" Like, and you, my best friend, the man that was my friend, that I believed in, that I trusted, you too are in on this? Then falls Caesar. He's like, then I it's like I've got nothing left to live for. And so boom. It's sad, right? But the lesson is not don't do anything just because you might be nervous or afraid. And that's why I paused. I'm like, it's the simpleton reading would say that. Shakespeare was giving him in such a limited amount of words that Caesar actually has, he gives him the last words. And I think that is what is most important. Though it's those last words of come what may. And I think there was definitely a push, especially after World War II, the literature really reflected to live and die on your own terms, but don't live a life in which you die a thousand times, in which you never try new things, you never push yourself to experience different opportunities because that's like a death. You holding yourself back is preventing you from your destiny. And I think our destiny, no matter what awaits us, is to fulfill our potential to the best of our abilities as often as possible. What else is there? What are the alternatives? To seclude ourselves, isolate ourselves, become a Patrick and create a home under a rock. While that is an option, I think, God, what a terrible one. At least I can't imagine that. Talk about our ability to have an imagination. I can't and I don't want to. I don't want to waste my time on it because it's so sad, so tragic of a life, of everything that we have before us, everything that we have available to us. And I'm not saying with riches and consumption and things. I'm talking energy and spirit and soul, everything we possess from within to excel outside and beyond. Why would we ever choose that path of fear when we could choose this path that included change, included an open minded approach of a different narrative in which we succeed? We are the victors of our intentions and our attempts. Even if we fall short, we've gained clarity, we've gained experience, wisdom, maturity, we've grown. I mean, what beautiful potential is that? So I leave you with that one. Change is your friend, it is not your enemy. I'm not talking the extremes and literature, as in the tragedy of Julius Caesar. The norms of life are not extreme, but the norms of life do include change, the possibility for change, the pursuit, the pursuit of change, right? Not wait for it to come to our front door, but leave our door and explore, right? That is change in itself because you are open-minded, eyes wide, not waiting for, but looking for alternative paths. and with some prudence, right? Not just leap before you look, but I'm not saying go into these situations blindly and dumbly, right? Just jumping off the cliff and, "Oh, crap, that was not smart." That's what I mean, not these extremes of stupidity. I'm saying the day in, day out of interacting with people, of trying new things, of fighting back our fears, because that's change in itself. Because you are able to venture, to peer around that corner, to seek. God, it's Star Trek, right? The opening monologue. The whole mission is to explore universes unknown, right? To go beyond all things known. You get to do that every day, in ways that, as a result of that exploration, you are smarter, you're wiser, you are stronger, life is clear, you are more confident, right? What a list of strength, of bounty. That is why. Huh. Never really thought about it. But as I've been thinking about it and listening to myself and exploring this topic, that's why I love change. That's why I love to travel. That's why I'm not afraid to move, to try new things, because it's so exciting. The growth you get out of it, the benefit you get from it is fulfilling, right? It brings joy and interest to who you are and the life you live. So, things to think about. Think about the ways in which you can embrace change, you can incorporate more change in your life, and do it with your eyes open, do it alert, do it thinking before leaping, but try it and let me know how it works out. Until then, take care.